Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the Path to Liberty. This is the Fast Friday edition of the show for April 10th, 2020. In times of crisis and fear, you'll almost always find people who support the monster state calling for more power, more government power, more centralized power as a so-called solution to basically anything and everything. And one of the first things we always see them go to is more surveillance. Warrantless mass surveillance is something that gets pushed through in these types of times over and over again. So today, I'm going to cover the latest news about a proposed national patient and healthcare surveillance network that I think is pretty Orwellian. First of all, my name is Michael Bolden. We broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time from here in my home office and studio in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. We've got all kinds of platforms and channels that we're on: live streaming video, archive audio, audio-only podcast editions. You can find all of those platforms, all the channels, shows that I've done in the past, links that I reference in each episode, all the ways to follow us, our social media channels, email, newsletter, and even how you can support us for as little as $2 a month in our membership program. Find all of that over at the show homepage, 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty, all spelled out. Again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. Look, I am extremely grateful for you spending some of your time with me today. I hope you are as happy, as safe, as healthy, and as stocked up as can be. But I promise not to take up too much of your time since it's Fast Friday, so let's see if I can get this information out to you in about 10 to 15 minutes. And I want to first start out with an article that we published this morning from someone who goes by a pseudonym only, J. Private. The article is Task Force Floats Health Surveillance System. And it starts out like this: when is enough enough? How many national surveillance systems does America need? There's tons of them. We've got license plate readers, stingray spying, cell site simulators, drones, facial recognition, other biometrics, and more and more and more. We've got call detail records program and the like. Well, it looks like Jared Kushner has created a task force that wants to create a real-time national health crisis surveillance system. And an article published by Politico revealed how the national surveillance system would allow federal authorities to see why someone is visiting their doctor and why they are in the hospital. And here, let's check this out from Politico, which was published, I think, Tuesday evening over on the 7th. And they go back to Kushner's task force. Turns out they've reached out to a range of health technology companies. This is Adam Cancrin writing, creating a national surveillance system to give the government a near real-time view of where patients are seeking treatment and for what, and whether hospitals can accommodate them. The idea is that it's supposed to, well, ostensibly, they're going to be able to figure out where supplies need to go and who's overwhelmed and how to figure out who is following what rules and the like. But they go further on this in Politico, and I was surprised to see some positive pro-Constitution statements in here. Not a ton, but a little bit. And it's pretty close to the top of the article, too, where most people read. This is how they put it: the prospect of compiling a national database of potentially sensitive health information has prompted concerns about its impact on civil liberties well after the threat recedes, with some critics comparing it to the Patriot Act enacted after the 9/11 attacks. And I think that's a really good comparison, because if you've paid attention to the show for a while, and I'm sorry for not having suggested episodes, I've covered so many times all the different types of programs that we've gotten, whether it's Department of Homeland Security, the Patriot Act and all the surveillance tools that came out of it, the Real ID Act, facial recognition, basically anywhere and everywhere where they want to expand surveillance. And it all came out of that time of great fear and emergency panic, where if you didn't support the legislation, you were against the troops, you were against America, you were pro-terrorist, all these other types of things, that these labels that they can slap on people so they back down and stop opposing more power. And I think we are probably very close to that, or for all we know, they've already passed some of these types of things today. But going further to J. Private, this is how the article, I think it's a he, I think J. Private's a he, who knows? Let's just say this is how J. Private put it. It's hard to put into words how disturbing the White House's plan is. Imagine serving up your entire life's medical history to a government that only seems interested in knowing everything about all of us. They are already working towards that goal. They want to build profiles on anywhere that you go, people that you talk to, your travel history, your communication history, and the like. And this is just another piece of that puzzle, and I think a very dangerous potential expansion of what's already really bad. And the article goes further. When someone goes to the hospital for an injury or a malady, they are asked to fill out a medical questionnaire that asks patients to reveal all kinds of personal information that government officials could have access to at their fingertips now because of this proposed program. I don't think it takes a really crazy imagination to figure out ways they might use this type of information in the future. We can just go with that. Now, Judge Andrew Napolitano, who I think is a great constitutionalist, one that I don't always agree with, but the reason I say he's a great constitutionalist is because even where I disagree with him, he's at least making a constitutional argument. And most people that I disagree with when it comes to powers of the government, they're not even looking at the Constitution. They don't care about it. They treat it like toilet paper. So at least Judge Knapp is always looking to it, but he has some really good points here on this. He did an interview with Neil Cavuto recently, and he says, first of all, about the supply chain question, do we really want the federal government allocating resources to hospitals? Or do we want the law of supply and demand and hospitals deciding when and where and how much resources they need? There's a lot of bad education that's happened in this country. People really believe that the solution to problems is more centralization of power. When the fact of the matter is when you have centralized decision making, you have what's called a single point of failure. So any mistake in Washington, D.C. on this is going to screw over everybody everywhere. When you decentralize and you have multiple points of failure, you not only get competition, you get people competing for different approaches, you get people trying things that are more specific to their areas. What's right for Los Angeles probably isn't right for Fargo, and vice versa. So, and when, let's say, someone screws up, but when they screw up, the effect is much more limited in size and scope, and of course, the geographic area. So a single point of failure is bad. So that's a really great question. Why would you want the federal government questioning or making determination of who needs supplies? It isn't really, that's not their expertise. Their expertise is ripping you off, printing money, starting wars, violating rights, and, they should just, well, we don't want them to stick to that, but we don't want them getting into other areas as well. Now, issue number 2, Napolitano continued, and this is from Newsweek, is that the Fourth Amendment says the federal government can't surveil you without a search warrant. They can't engage in mass surveillance, whether it's for your safety or health or just for their lurid desires of knowing where everybody is. And my view is when they tell you this is for your security, we know it really means this is so they can control you. Now, even though this is just a proposal right now, this isn't the only one. And this article over at The Intercept this week covered a cell phone, I guess they're like an app or a development company called Funware. Surprise, what a great name. Phunware. If they were just building games for my nephews, that's an awesome name. But it looks like they want to do a lot of location tracking because they're collecting a lot of data in these apps. And this is the CEO, Nitowski, explained that the company could utilize something called geofencing technology, the same method that they use to target potential voters. They use geofencing to find out where people are to deliver certain information for, get this, social distancing policy enforcement. Geofencing allows apps to draw virtual boundaries across a map and keep tabs on who comes in and out by tracking a phone's position using a combination of cellular towers and GPS pings. Now, if that sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, a personal practical example, I was renting one of these like bike share, these scooters, like a Lime or a Bird or an Uber scooter, something like that. With a friend of mine, we were in Santa Monica, and we were scooting down the street, and it's a busy highway, Pacific Coast Highway. I didn't want to be on the street, so we decided to go on the bike path that winds along the beach. People are biking, riding electric bikes, all kinds of stuff. But the scooter companies that let you rent for like $1.50 or whatever it is, they charge you by the minute. Maybe it was like 20 cents a minute at the time. As soon as you get into a certain area, it cuts the speed from like 16 miles an hour to like 2 miles an hour, and it's worthless. But when you get off that bike path and maybe take it 10, 15 feet away, all of a sudden it starts working again. They don't want you to use it there. So in my experience, at least in that particular situation, the geofencing can be relatively accurate. And they do have ways to actually kind of enforce that geofence. Now, we see this type of thing being implemented at least one area. And let's go to the St. George News. This was published, it looks like on Wednesday, the 8th. Governor orders virtual checkpoints set up at port of entry, US 89 near Knapp. Governor Gary Herbert, the report from Chris Reed says, has ordered checkpoints to be set up starting Friday at the Utah-Arizona border port of entry on Interstate 15 and the border crossing on US Highway 89 near Knapp. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. The checkpoints will be purely electronic through geofencing and the state's emergency alert text system. Officers will not be stopping vehicles at the state borders. Rather, a text will be sent to, they don't want you to text and drive, but as soon as you cross the border from Arizona into Utah, you're going to get an emergency alert text, which is different. If you've never seen one of these, it kind of takes over your screen, your lock screen. It pops up. You get a different kind of a notice. And I think, first of all, this is not going to be safe for driving, but they're going to, as soon as you cross that border into the state, you're going to get this emergency alert asking drivers to fill out a declaration form once they get to their destination or stop safely. They have to do it right away while you're driving. That's really amazing. Great government work there. Going further in the report, the Utah Department of Transportation designated 9 checkpoints in the state that include the I-15 port of entry and the US 89 near Knapp, as well as Salt Lake City International Airport. As of now, there will not be checkpoints on the Utah-Arizona crossing on Old Highway 91 or at St. George Regional Airport. Carlos Procera, executive director of Utah Department of Transportation, said there are no plans for punitive measures. Now check out this quote. These are the types of things that I get a red flag for, this type of thing. So if you're thinking, want to know how I think when I read these articles, listen to this. We are not prepared at this point to chase vehicles down. So 2 things that Carlos Procera said there, said they're not prepared to chase vehicles down at this point. To me, that tells me that they are getting prepared in case they decide to do this. They're not saying we are never going to do this. They're literally just deflecting and saying, at this point, we're not prepared to do that. He says, we don't anticipate this. We do not see this as an effort to penalize people. We will be able to look at how many vehicles enter the state. This is more for data, more for surveillance. We hope people will understand why this is important. And then this also comes from someone named with the last name Lee, Nathan Lee, the director of Technology and Innovation at Utah Department of Transportation. He says, phase 1 will definitely be an honor system. So that's the only definite we're getting from Utah Department of Transportation on this geofencing kind of checkpoint system. Phase 1 is going to be an honor system. You're going to get this notification while you're driving, even though they tell you not to be using your phone while you're driving, of course. And then when you get to your destination, you have to fill out some forms and tell them where you are, who you are, where you're going, and the like. Now, going further, this is how Jay Private summed it up. Now, he's talking about basically this whole thing being turned over to the DHS at some point through a different program via the CDC, but similar. He says giving DHS the keys to Americans' health records at the click of a button is a recipe for disaster. I agree. Not only will every hacker in the world try and gain access to them, but it will open up a new form of public surveillance. I am far less concerned about every hacker around the world having access, and far more concerned about the most powerful military empire the world has ever seen having this type of information to build profiles on people or expand the profiles that they've already been building. And he closes it up like this. Since 9/11, we've seen numerous public surveillance networks created as an excuse to assuage public fears, but creating another patient surveillance system doesn't make sense, and it's not needed. And I think James Madison, the way I wanted to close it out is this quote from James Madison. This is December of 1829 in Virginia. He put it this way: the essence of government is power, and power, lodged as it must be in human hands, will ever be liable to abuse. Well, I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope you found it educational. That's the most important thing. I hope you learned something. Again, I hope you are as safe, as healthy, as happy, and as stocked up as can be. I hope you have a good Easter weekend under the circumstances with your friends, family, or whoever you may be celebrating or spending time with, whether it's in person or virtually on the internet and the like. I appreciate you joining me today. If you like the show, you can do a bunch of free things to help us spread the word. All of the platforms you may watch or listen on are very easily triggered. So literally just hitting the like button, smashing the like button, subscribing, leaving comments, sharing, things like that. All that does is all those things, they tell the algorithm to show the program to more people. Reviews on iTunes, Spotify, and elsewhere also help a great deal. So that's all free. If you want to pitch in financially, I'm very grateful for any consideration you can give to that. As little as $2 a month goes a long, long way. That's 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Again, thank you so much for joining me. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you next week here on the Path to Liberty.